Okay, so welcome to my second episode of my podcast about the book In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. And today we're going to talk about his influence on the novel. So truthfully, he didn't have an influence on the story, but he did have an influence on the writing of the novel and how he did it and other parts. Since the story is true, he only influenced the details and the creative liberties that he took, and not the aspect of what happens and the conclusion and everything. So some of the reasons that he has such a deep love of writing is because of his childhood, and I think it's something that he leaned back on because of his rough childhood. In this article on More Than Our Childhoods, it talks about he was very young and he was 2 years old, and his mom would go off and she would leave him, and she would leave him locked in a hotel room, and he would cry and cry and cry, and he could never get out. And he would continue to go through instances and times like that where he would be left alone and wouldn't know where to go for years on it, for a long time. And it leaves a child desperate and wanting something else. And so I feel that it happen. He went to writing because it's a free space where he could be himself and relax and process his thoughts and create ideas and be creative and have fun. And so then that affected him because of his deep love of writing. When he started to research his crimes after they were committed, he started researching and was researching for 6 years in Kansas and worked very hard on researching and went into every detail of researching and interviewing Perry and Dick. And he worked with his childhood friend Harper Lee, who they had a shared connection because of their rough childhoods. But I learned this and about their connection and how he researched for 6 years on the website Britannica. And then she had this really rough childhood, and she acted as his protector during their childhood, and they had a deep connection. They both went through really hard times as kids, and this both hurt them and led them to become the writers that they are today. She was seen as his protector, although she was younger when she was a kid, and so this could have been part of the reason they had such a strong connection because of what they went through. And I learned that from biography.com, so that's where I did my research on their actual relationship and how that worked and how they were best friends and why and how they were so close. But during the research and during the time, she was his assistant with him, so she was in Kansas with him, and she was his research assistant and helped did the deep dive on these murders and how they affected everything else. And so yeah, that was how he influenced the novel because of when he went through as a child, and because of his deep love of writing and how he found an escape. And he really loved diving in and that to the story and finding out the truth and finding out the details and the work. He did the work that no one else wanted to, because it was such a bloody, horrific crime scene, especially in the town. And at the time, it was seen as a very large deal, and it's very easy to look up and you can see the horrific sights from it. And so he really wanted to do that work and live up to his potential. He has some other good novels that are popular, but this was one of his best. So for more, so that would be his perspective of and how he influenced the novel.